Sometimes a single phone call can turn your entire life upside down. The truths you thought you knew suddenly collapse into lies. Rachel Morgan's story began with one such call. Rachel Morgan was 34, a graphic designer living in Brooklyn, New York. One Tuesday morning, while sipping her coffee, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. On the line was an attorney from Ohio. "Miss Morgan," he said, "I have surprising news. A distant relative of yours, Margaret Whitman, has passed away. In her will, you are named as the sole heir." Rachel froze. She had never heard the name Margaret Whitman before. But within days, official papers arrived confirming the truth. The inheritance was real. An old farmhouse in Ohio, acres of land, and money in the bank. But there was one condition. Rachel had to live in the house for 3 months. Otherwise, everything would go to the local community center. A week later, Rachel drove through miles of empty farmland until the Whitman farmhouse appeared on the horizon. The once grand home stood weathered and silent, carrying the weight of decades past. Inside, the air smelled of dust and wood long left untouched. As she wandered the hallways, Rachel's eyes fell on framed photographs covering the walls. Young men, women, family gatherings frozen in time. And then, one photo stopped her cold. A portrait of a young Margaret. Rachel leaned closer, her breath catching. The eyes, the cheekbones, the curve of the smile. She looked disturbingly like herself. It was as if she were staring at her own reflection, dressed in clothes from another era. A chill ran through her body. Over the next few days, Rachel ventured into town. She tried to blend in, but whispers followed her. At the grocery store, at the diner, in the church parking lot. That's her, the Whitman heir. Nothing good ever came from that family. The house should have gone to the community, not to her. Rachel felt the hostility. People weren't just curious, they didn't want her there. And she began to wonder why. One evening, unable to sleep, Rachel decided to explore the basement. She pushed open a rusty door and stepped into the damp air. Old trunks, boxes, and furniture filled the room, all draped in dust. In a cracked leather trunk, she found faded letters, journals, and a small stack of photographs. She picked one up, and her hands trembled. It was a baby photo. She recognized it instantly. It was her, in her mother's arms. The same photo had hung for years in her family's living room in New York. But what was it doing here, hidden in Margaret's basement? Rachel turned the photo over. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "I care for her as if she were my own." Her stomach dropped. What did that mean? Why would Margaret write that about her? She opened the worn leather journal, the pages brittle with age. At first, it was ordinary. Notes about the farm, the weather, daily chores. But then the words shifted. Her eyes widened as she read. "I made a mistake that haunted me forever. I fell into an affair with my sister's husband. When I became pregnant, the family panicked. To save our name, they sent me away to another city. When the child was born, they took her from me. My sister and her husband, unable to have children of their own, raised her as theirs. She grew up believing she was theirs daughter. That little girl is Rachel." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. She clutched the journal tighter, desperate to keep reading. The journal continued. "After the birth, I was told to stay silent. The shame of the truth would have destroyed us all. I returned home, but I was never allowed to claim her as mine. And then, last year, tragedy struck. The people Rachel believed to be her parents died in a car accident. For the first time in decades, I thought of telling her the truth. I even traveled close to where she lived, but when I saw her, I couldn't do it. I couldn't shatter her world. Instead, I left everything I had to her, hoping that in this house, she might discover who she really is. Rachel's tears blurred the ink on the page. Her entire life, her family, her childhood, her identity was built on a lie. For days, Rachel wandered the farmhouse, haunted by the echoes of a family she never knew she had. She thought of her childhood, her parents, and the woman who had carried her but never claimed her. She could walk away. She could return to Brooklyn, close the door on this cursed inheritance, and pretend the truth didn't exist. But something inside her had shifted. She could not unknow what she now knew. Rachel decided to stay. She accepted the inheritance, but not as wealth. She began transforming the farmhouse into a community art and cultural center, a place where children could paint, neighbors could gather, and stories, truthful stories, could finally be shared. On her last night of reading, Rachel turned to the final page of Margaret's journal. The words were simple but heavy. Rachel, if you ever find these pages, know this: I loved you in silence. I stayed away to protect you, but the silence cost me everything. Forgive me if you can. Rachel closed the journal, her hands trembling. She no longer knew who she had been, but she was beginning to understand who she could become. The inheritance was not just land or money or an old farmhouse. It was the truth. Painful, devastating, liberating truth. So ask yourself this: if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie, would you want to know the truth?